Powered by Riverside FM.
Some people believe that the ghost or spirit never leaves Earth, at least until there is no one left to remember the one who died. The idea that even after we pass, an element of ourselves is left behind can be a comfort. But for others, the idea of a malignant spirit that haunts long after death is considered unnatural and undesirable. This notion is universally the case in pre-modern folk cultures, but fear of ghosts also remains an integral aspect of the modern ghost story, gothic horror, and other horror fiction dealing with the supernatural. Ghost fiction often puts the reader in the shoes of a living protagonist, put against these unwanted spirits. This is the case in Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, still one of the best literary ghost stories ever published. Then there's Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol, where festive spirits act as an agent of change on Ebenezer Scrooge. For a more modern example, there's science fiction comedy Ghostbusters, where schlubby New Yorkers get into the exorcism business. And yet, what about the stories told from the perspective of a ghost? Instead of feeling disgust at our protagonist, do we instead empathise with their situation? To count, there's far fewer pieces of media that deal with this point of view, and fewer still in the realm of video games. But one great example is the title we'll be discussing today. Oft forgotten, but as long as there are those that remember it, its spirit will linger hopefully a little longer. The question is, of course, whether it is a friendly ghost in the style of Casper, or a malignant spirit that should be banished. On this episode of Bullet Time, we look at N-Space's and Nintendo's 2005 released Geist. To warm ourselves up, and I'll just sort of cut whenever it seems interesting.
The problem is the only thing I know how to talk about these days is Geist, so...
Well, we can go with that. I mean, I suppose in that case, I guess we could just get right into it, which is, hey everybody, welcome to Bullet Time, the video game podcast where we analyze the shooters that missed their marks. As usual, I'm James, but today I am joined by a new special guest host.
Can't tell if this is it.
What's that?
Is this it?
Is this what?
Is this what we started?
What were you hope? Yeah, no, were you hoping for like?
Oh, right, that was just so.
I mean, you'll hear it.
I felt like an example.
Oh yeah, no, that's yeah. I'm sorry. That's just I thought just go straight into it, and just super smooth, like .
Yeah, you didn't switch into podcast voice.
Yeah.
Oh god. Well, the problem is that I haven't really invented my podcast voice yet. I mean, okay, hold on. Let me. I'll give it a shot. Okay, here we go. Hi, and welcome to Bullet Time, the video game podcast where we analyze the shooters that miss their marks. I'm YouTube's Hot Cider, and I'm here with special guest host. Hey, it me, Ben.
Hello, I'm Ben. Oh yeah. So this is the podcast.
Where's your podcast voice?
I don't know. It's been a while. I'm out of the game.
I was about to say, yeah, this is kind of these are the training wheels for eventually. I don't know. I'm trying to get you back in the game here. Maybe
there'll be a game at some point. We don't know.
Game overtime. Well, we'll do something. We'll see what happens. But you know what's now that I've introduced you like that, I've had this really good thing going with all the other guest hosts where I have like a different introduction for each of them depending what game we're talking about. I mean, I could do that now. It would be awkward, like stopping and like starting again. But I don't know. It's pretty good.
You could call me, I don't know, the Ghastly.
Well, we've already done the intro twice. The second one was more AI than podcasty. It seemed like, those videos that like just recap movie plots.
Those TikTok videos where they use the inbuilt voice where it sounds like God, have you seen it that they've done the They redid the beginning of Half-Life 1, but they replaced the transit voice with the TikTok woman. And she's just
that's so good.
Now entering Black Mesa. They did that as well with the beginning of the Stanley Parable. And
our voice it's too good.
It is too good. I know. It just cracks me up whenever I hear it. Anyways, I'm joined by the Volks Corporation's #1 Diddy player. Hey, it me, Ben.
Hello.
What do you think of that intro?
I can't think about much other than Geist, if I'm honest. It's difficult. It takes up a lot of space in my...
That's fine.
My cranium these days.
It really does. It's like your brain is It's like your brain is a small DVD disc, much like the small DVD disc that this game came on. Speaking of which, we're also joined by special guests from the YouTube channel, Razbuten, video maker and essayist. Razbuten, welcome to Valid Time.
Thank you. I'm Raz.
Oh, hello. Raz.
That's my podcast voice. I'm Raz.
Oh, there we go. That's a much better podcast.
Hi.
That's a way more professional podcast.
I'm Raz.
Hi, I'm Raz. If you ever have like a you know those websites where they do the stuffed toy like versions of YouTube mascots? If you have one of your paper bag guy, you should also ask if it could have like a little speaker in it, so when you squeeze it, it goes, "Hi, I'm Raz."
That'd be cool.
That would be good, yeah. What other phrases would he say? So, "Hi, I'm Raz," obviously.
Minimaps are stupid.
Yeah, I was gonna bring this up. So, very recently, you were talking shit about minimaps, and I think that before we even get into Geist, we need to bury the hatch on this. So, what's the deal? What's the problem with minimaps?
They're just too mini, and too mappy as well.
Quite small.
So you're thinking make them larger and make them
less like
I just want to play asteroids.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay.
That's a good idea, actually, is that rather than having a mini-map, they just put a very small game in the corner of the screen. So like in Witcher 3, if you're just bored, you can just have a look in the corner and like Pac-Man's there. And it's just like, I'm going to play that instead. I'd be okay with that. Is that a patentable idea?
No mini-maps in Geist.
No, that is true. There isn't any mini-maps in Geist, although we might be kind of wrong on that because, folks, the game that we're talking about today is 2005's Geist, a game by N-Space and Nintendo, weirdly enough, which I guess we'll get into a little bit of that. But first things first, so Razbuten...
Oh, really? Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
What, it makes sense that it was a Nintendo game?
Yeah, because of something in the game that I saw.
Okay, yeah, no, there's you'll be surprised how Nintendo-y it is as we kind of dig into it. But first things first, Raz, if people at home don't know who you are, give us a brief explainer of what you do, I guess.
Yeah, I make YouTube videos about game design and emotions sometimes as well.
And I guess out of interest, because I asked a couple of people, because these are still the first kind of early episodes of Bullet Time that we're into at the moment. And I went to all my YouTube friends and I was like, what's an FPS game that isn't a very good one, but it's one that you had an interest in or one you liked? And you pitched 2 games to us. One of them we may do at some point, but it's going to be a lot harder to emulate, not unlike this. But the other one that you suggested was Geist. And I guess just to kind of like kick off where we are and what we'll get into, I don't know, what was it about Geist that has stuck with you? Because this is a game that came out, over nearly 17 years ago at this point.
Wow. That hurt to hear, the 17. So, I mean, I have not played the single player of Geist ever. It was always a multiplayer game for me. And for a while, like that's just how I played games, just doing either couch co-op or just split screen multiplayer with friends.
Yeah.
I cared way, way less about single player campaigns, and it was all about like how much time I could, spill into a game when hanging out with other people. So I was always looking for stuff. My friends and I, got into the popular stuff, played a lot of Halo,
Yeah.
played a lot of Halo 2. And I think something we noticed that we would do is like, we would get tired of the basic game modes and then want to like make up our own weirder ideas for modes.
Okay.
That weren't like the typical deathmatch or capture the flag. Like we wanted to do different things. So we'd make stuff up. And I think that kind of created a curiosity in us of like, I wonder if there are just games that do cooler modes.
Yeah.
So then when we heard about Geist, that was just like, oh, this whole game is about like possessing, hosts and that's like the core element. It seemed really interesting, and different from anything else before. So that's what initially drew us to like getting it. And then giving it a shot.
Neat. And you kind of put quite a bit of time into like Geist by the sounds of things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was 17 years ago.
Yeah.
Roughly. But yeah, I mean, it certainly was not my friend group's most played game.
Sure.
But definitely for a span of months, it was the go-to game to play.
Okay. Because, yeah, it's funny, because you were saying that obviously it was something that you and your friends had discovered, but, like, I remember when they were advertising this game sort of around the time that it was coming out, but I could never actually... In the UK, they didn't really release a lot of copies of it, from what I remember. This was a weird era in regards to sort of at the tail end of the GameCube, where just a lot of like game stores just kind of gave up supporting it because, I mean, the PS2 was doing like massively over in Europe and the Xbox was kind of following behind. But I don't know, for some reason, they just took a lot of like shelf space out for GameCube stuff. And it's a double shame as well, considering that this is a genuine, well, it's a Nintendo published game as well, which you think would give it a little bit more space. But I've always kind of known about this, but it's like the first time I properly played it was for this podcast, funnily enough. And I'll say this, even though it's a 17-year-old game, there's a lot of stuff in it which I thought was still pretty charming and kind of held up in a weird way. But I don't know if everyone agrees with that.
Well,
yeah, Ben, I'd like to hear your opinion on this, because first things first, when this game came out, you were 4, I believe?
I was 5. No, I was 5.
Right,
if it was 2005, yeah?
It was 2005, so you were 2005 in 2005.
It is... It's a game that's aged, I think, a decent amount. And it's also a game that sort of it feels like it has a lot of cool ideas. And if a young indie studio decided to remake Geist, they can make a very interesting game that maybe works a bit better.
So that was my thought, was that this game seems like it's ripe for, much like how like in the 80s a ton of people were doing like remakes of old 50s films like The Thing from Another World and stuff like that, or The Fly. This game is like ripe for like Devolver to remake it as like, something a little less crummier looking, maybe a little bit more faster paced, and kind of like really flesh out the ghost stuff that it has. Because, I don't know, I'll say this much, I didn't beat the single player, so just to kind of give you a brief overview, Raz, because you didn't touch it, the single player mode of this game is essentially like, it's like budget Half-Life, but occasionally the puzzles turn into... Did you ever play the DS game Ghost Trick?
No.
Okay.
But I have listened to the music for it.
The music's very good in Ghost Trick. Ben, you can help me fill this out. We're both on record as being big fans of Ghost Trick.
It's sort of... I think it's sort of like Ghost Trick, but my issue with the puzzles in this game, and I feel like we're going to talk a lot about this, but it just felt like I was looking for the right object that I can interact with.
Yeah.
I was just wandering around clicking on things until I found something that I could actually inhabit.
Yeah, that's the main issue is that...
and then the puzzle was simple after that.
Yeah, like, the main issue is that, like, on paper, this is, like, kind of super ambitious what they're doing, because essentially you can be a human being, or you can be an animal, or you can be an object, and, like, all of them are, like, they all have their own different control schemes, they all have different animations and stuff, which is quite interestingly set up. And I guess, I suppose to maybe just get a little bit into sort of how this came about. So, well, as I kind of said earlier, so the game is made by N-Space, who, they're based in Orlando, and weirdly enough, they're founded by two ex-Lockheed Martin guys who are like really in the technical side of stuff, but they decide to leave doing flight simulations and they get into the games industry. And one of the first projects they do is they work with Sega on their Model 1 and Model 2 arcade boards, which are like the first proper 3D systems coming out. Like, it's because of them that like Virtua Fighter exists and Daytona USA and stuff like that. So like, they're a relatively big deal, but then they just kind of end up getting stuck in the minds of doing a lot of shovelware, including, well, I say including, one of the games that they worked on, which I had no idea about until doing research, was they did the Rugrats game on the PS1, Search for Reptar, which I don't, if anybody's played, if you haven't played it, I will say this much, it is a low-key banger platformers-wise. It is a pretty decent Super Mario 64 knockoff starring the characters from the Nickelodeon cartoon Rugrats. But they also did Mary Kate and Ashley Swig 16 License to Drive, which I'm guessing that's a game that neither of you owned.
No.
No, you
can't say I have.
I was got to say, Ben, like, is Mary Kate and Ashley like way before your time? I'm guessing because there was like a weird.
I've heard the names.
Yeah, there wasn't like a weird period of time where they were like a celebrity presence because they were like I think they were like babies on Full House or something, but then they just kind of stuck around on television stuff. You know the girl who plays Scarlet Witch in WandaVision and stuff? She's the sister of Mary Kate and Ashley.
Oh yeah, the Olsen twins.
Yeah, she is the younger sister of the Olsen twins. So there you go, a bit of a celebrity connection there. But yeah, they end up getting this project Geist, but after that, they kind of end up becoming the people that you go to do the FPS games for the Nintendo DS. So they did all the Call of Duty adaptations. They did GoldenEye Rogue Agent and stuff like that. But then the last big projects that they work on, weirdly enough, is that they start to get into D&D stuff. And the last game that they do is called Sword Coast Legends, which they do with Digital Extremes, but it's technically for Wizards of the Coast. And then Wizards shuts them down after like 22 years of games development. But yeah, just kind of a weird sort of life that they had in regards to stuff that they were working on. But Geist essentially came about from they were looking at doing an FPS project, but literally at the same time, Nintendo were courting developers for an FPS game, which, on reflection, the GameCube era is kind of weird in regards to
a little bit.
Yeah, just I mean, Raz, what's your kind of feeling on? Because I imagine, because I believe you're kind of the same age as me, so kind of like the GameCube era is the one that you probably remember the most clearly as like the early games era for you, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, N64 was when I like first started playing games, but
yeah,
the GameCube was when I feel like I was old enough to appreciate and play a wider cat. Like, you know, I was old enough where, I mean, I shouldn't have been buying M-rated games.
Sure.
But like with enough convincing to my parents, you know, was able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like what they were putting out. I don't know. I think that in some ways the GameCube games are like, I mean, it's the experimental era, right? That's kind of what Nintendo does, is they like have success, you know, and then they're like, let's get a little weird with this next generation.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of, especially with them, where it was like with the N64, they were like, okay, we need to figure out 3D, so let's not go too off the trail here. So you have Ocarina of Time, which is essentially like 3D Link to the Past. And then you have like Mario Kart, which, you know, still uses 2D sprites like the one on the SNES did. But then, yeah, they hop over to the GameCube and they're a bit more comfortable with it. And that's where you end up with like the Wind Waker and Double Dash and stuff, which, I mean, Wind Waker is like very much a standard Zelda game, but it is just the look of it, especially at the time, was just so kind of like shocking to people. Whereas Double Dash is something they've never redone.
The only other GameCube game that I can think of that's Nintendo published that sort of gives me Geist vibes is like Eternal Darkness, probably.
Yeah, and that was another GameCube game, which again kind of feels like it's on that tip of, I don't know, it was funny because they made this console which was like a small purple cube with a handle. Like very much it is of the other consoles out at the time, very kind of kid friendly, but they did have this streak to them that they felt like we need to kind of cater to a more mature audience. Like it wasn't like, because yeah, as you said, Eternal Darkness, which have either of you tried it?
Yeah, I owned it as a kid.
Oh, what did you think?
I didn't get very far. It was quite hard and confusing.
In fairness, I played it on Dolphin as an adult man, and I also found it very hard and confusing and didn't get very far either. So, yeah, but it's funny because not only that, but like the developers who did Eternal Darkness, like they courted them to do a remake of Metal Gear Solid 1, which was like the whole thing of, hey guys, we got Metal Gear Solid on the GameCube, and then they basically signed a deal with Capcom to be like, all the Resident Evil games were going to be put on the GameCube, which is how we got like the remake of 1 and 0, and like Resident Evil 4 was like exclusive for a long time as well on the GameCube. And yeah, it's just kind of odd that like, I mean, it's funny because like Nintendo, I almost kind of think like they've moved away from doing mature stuff, and I almost wonder whether it was because like their experimentation on the GameCube wasn't like mega successful. I don't think the sales are really good for any of these games, and I can't really think of much on the Wii and beyond sort of imitates this in any way. No,
at least not any exclusive.
Yeah, well, not even exclusive, just Nintendo published. I don't think they like to put their names on that sort of thing anymore. Unless like Bayonetta, and I think they might do Fatal Frame. I think they might publish.
Oh yeah,
those
that's
now.
right. They do publish the Fatal Frame games. Also, don't forget they did technically publish Devil's Third from Valhalla Games.
Yeah,
Ninja Gaiden developers. Somebody asked if we were going to do that on the podcast at some point. I was like, I don't know if I want to. I'm not going to pull out my Wii U for Devil's Third.
It's on. Didn't it come to PC after the fact?
It did. I think it did come to PC, not published by. God, imagine if it was like that's the only Nintendo published game on PC is Devil's Third.
That'd be incredible.
That'd be amazing. Unfortunately, not though. Yeah, so it's weird. Like, I guess, they tried this experiment of wanting to make stuff that was a little bit more mature, but it never quite figured out. And I guess I wonder if Geist was kind of part of that because. Yeah, it's just sort of looking at the developer interviews and stuff. So N-Space comes up with this prototype and they show it to Nintendo, and like Nintendo of America like fall in love with it. Like they just think it's amazing, and they go, we're gonna get all of Nintendo involved in this, including Miyamoto is going to be a producer on this, which apparently it kind of boiled down to when they were working on the game, he just kept pitching them ideas for, what if you could... Like, he didn't really care about the shooting side.
Oh, I can't imagine he would. I can
understand. No, the actual violent side of stuff he didn't really care for, but it was more so the possession stuff that he was really into, which
Mario Odyssey precursor? Is that?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It feels like maybe
definitely
he
does.
had that in the back pocket of, God, I kind of wish that maybe Mario Odyssey was more of an FPS game, knowing that.
Well, I'll say
Throws out
this.
a gun.
I think. Well,
Yeah.
I say the most interesting part of our Geist is the possession stuff. I also think it might be the worst part of Geist. To actually play. It is.
No, I agree with that, because it definitely feels like those two. So, like, the game is very much split down the middle between possession and the shooting. And I imagine probably in the multiplayer mode, those two blend together a lot easier, because it's a lot more fast paced and like you're actually going up against human enemies and stuff. So it's a lot more active in how those two bounce between each other. In the single player, it is very, I mean, that's kind of why I said it feels a bit like Half-Life 1, but like really budgety Half-Life, in regards to like, they really separate out when you're shooting or when you're doing a puzzle.
Yeah.
There's very small amounts of interaction, which
It's
again
rigid.
is a shame, because it's very rigid, which I wonder how much of that is just kind of down to, because I feel like probably if Miyamoto was getting involved and stuff, this is probably what pushes the game to the level of polish that it has at this, which isn't very high quality, but it is like of kind of other FPS games that were kind of out at the same time. I don't know, it has a lot of interesting ideas in it and kind of a lot of small ambitious stuff, to the extent of, I don't know whether you got this far, Ben, but there's a bit where you possess a motorcycle. And
That section is it is. So you basically possess a motorcycle, and then well, the driving's terrible, but you can move it left and right. But you can also come out of the motorcycle and do other things. And it's just
which is
it's such a cool idea, but wow. I think the inherent issue with that section of the game is that when you do depossess, I don't know what the word is, the motorcycle, you are slow.
Yeah.
You are very slow. So you sort of have to crawl up to enemies. Everything's moving around you in slow motion, which to me is like, well, then why aren't you a bit faster?
Yeah, no, exactly.
And then you have to possess other things and like, you know, shoot other guys, and it's cool, but it's kind of bad as well.
Yeah, it is. It definitely feels like, because I mean, again, not to like mention better games, but with Ghost Trick, like the movement in that is, well, I mean, essentially it's like your electricity and you're moving through wires, so it's like dead snappy, innit? This is this way, as you said, it's like slowly move through molasses to try and like possess stuff, which, especially like kind of in the beginning areas where there's just like, they'll throw you in rooms full of junk, but only specific junk can be hopped into. It is kind of annoying trying to figure, because like the first possession thing that you do is, I can't remember the exact thing, but you have to possess a bin at one point. And I kept trying to just possess the bin and it wasn't doing anything. And it was because I also had to know that I could possess a electrical box and cause it to spark that would then move the person towards the bin. And it was the bin exploding that scared them enough that you could go inside them. Which, just out of interest, so...
It's weirdly context sensitive.
Yeah, it is very context sensitive. I don't know, it is...
Like some of the things you can inhabit are like flexible and that you can move them around and shoot things and like do that sort of thing. But then there's others where it's like, well, you can press the scare button, it actually won't do anything until someone's standing right next to it.
It feels very much like a very old-fashioned like mechanical puzzle, which I don't know. It is odd that is combined with an FPS game, which isn't great, but it is quite, you know, it's fast moving for the time. Like, you know, you're strafing around, and I don't know. It's funny, the control scheme of it isn't, considering that this was a GameCube game back when, like, like Metroid Prime was out, where they refused to use the second stick.
Mhm.
It is surprising that the control scheme on it is quite smooth, which, I don't know, out of interest. So in the multiplayer mode, does that have the same thing as well, where you have to scare somebody enough in order to possess them?
Not from what I don't think it works exactly that way. I mean, it's interesting hearing you guys talk about the single player, because I feel like the design of the multiplayer makes way more sense with the core mechanic of possessions, and is like, I mean, I don't want to oversell it. Like,
no, absolutely.
This is not a multiplayer game that I'd go and play with friends today for more than like an hour.
Sure.
But I think, like, mechanically at least, and the ideas behind it, like, I mean, there are different modes that all like kind of try to do different things.
Yes.
But like, so first off, like, the big thing with possession in that is like the only things that I really remember you being able to possess are like hosts, like actual characters holding guns.
Got ya.
Nothing as cool as a motorcycle.
Yeah.
In the multiplayer.
No.
But essentially it's just like, instead of finding a rocket launcher on the map, you find a host with a rocket launcher, right? Like, that's their answer for, picking up new guns and why you might want to switch between stuff.
Yeah.
So like, it feels like it almost feels like the game was designed from a multiplayer stance first.
Yeah.
Like, hearing you talk about it, and then like, how do we make a single player game?
I think you might be right, because like a lot of the stuff that I liked in the single player most was where it did feel like little arenas. Like, do you remember either the first or the second boss, Ben, which is you go down into... Okay, so the story's really funny as well, because essentially... So you play as a guy called... you play as a guy called Jake Ramey, who is a mute protagonist. He looks like Commander Keen. He looks like a little kid with red hair.
I was gonna say he looks like an action figure.
Yeah, he does. He looks like he looks like a little.
He looks very generic.
Yeah, versus like all of his friends who are all like actual army people. But you get captured though, and even though at the beginning it's all very military and it's all like soldiers talking to each other in military speak, the person that you're going up against is like an old-fashioned British villain with like a big scar on the side of his head, like a James Bond villain, who basically built a secret base overneath a ghost well, which you're not sure why initially, but then it kind of makes sense as it goes on. But your guy gets captured and they throw him into the ghost machine where his spirit is removed from his body. And the idea is that they're going to throw the ghosts into like VR simulations to basically retrain them into like soldiers or something. I don't know. It doesn't, at the beginning it doesn't make a ton of sense, but a tiny Victorian ghost girl saves you and then teaches you how to use ghost powers, and I was like, okay, this is weird, but I'm interested to see where this goes.
It is
odd.
It's a mismatch of
like different.
It feels like a military sort of shooter.
Yes.
Mixed with the ghost stuff, which is, I think, was going to be the main thing for me. But then there's also aliens.
Yeah. Somehow aliens are involved, which is odd. But yeah, like the moment the Victorian ghost skill turns up, I was like, oh, this is cool. So maybe they're like bringing in ghosts from like different eras, and like it's like pre-2006 where your Native American granddad is in the afterlife, and anytime you die you go there and he teaches you to like hunt birds to get your health back so you can go back to the spaceship. This isn't quite like that. They do explain why it has a Victorian ghost guild, but basically because your ghost gets separated, he decides, right, the smartest thing to do would be to blow up this base. And because the base runs on nuclear power, he basically puts it into meltdown. and that's when you fight that. Well, actually, before you do that, isn't that like a bit where the ghost machine that they use to like separate the ghost from his body, he possesses the laser that controls it, and it basically, that's the reason why all the alien monsters are there? Like, he just makes things so much worse.
There are already aliens, but he sort of, I don't know what he releases, but he releases a big demon-looking guy. And it does mess things up. I don't really know what his deal is. I don't think I'm far enough in the story. But he looks like the devil.
You release Satan from hell because you're trying to blow up the base, and when blowing up the laser doesn't work, you go underground to where the nuclear power supply is, so you can put the base into meltdown, essentially, and destroy it with enormous nuclear force, which doesn't happen, weirdly enough. But the reason I mention all that is because there is a boss fight down there where there's the soldier that you need, the commander that you need to take out. He has 4 soldiers, but there's also 4 machine gun turrets. And so you can hop between the soldiers and the machine gun turrets. And I don't know, it's quite fun in regards to, it almost has the feeling of like a snappy multiplayer match, but instead of like running around an arena, you're snapping around an arena by like possessing these different guns and soldiers. I don't know, there are moments of this game where like the shooting side of stuff does kind of make sense. And there's like a fun...
Again...
Yeah,
you go on.
I was going to say, did you get to the fun puzzle where you have to help out the explosives guy? I think it's before the motorcycle bit. No, actually, no, it's after the motorcycle bit because it's when your friend dies.
Oh, I haven't got to that.
Oh, you didn't? Dang it. But you went to all the effort of saving your... Oh, yeah, sorry. Spoilers for the game, but you go through all this rigmarole to save your mate, and then your mate gets on a helicopter and the helicopter
no, it did happen. I just don't think I was paying enough attention during the cutscene.
Okay. No, fair enough. So you have to escort this little explosives guy through like all these different towers and stuff. But before you do that, you have to take out all the soldiers. And what you have to do is like, they have all of the gun turrets set up in a way that you need to take them out in a certain sequence, so that the last one is above explosive barrels. So you then explode the So you can possess explosive barrels in this game and just make them blow up whenever you want. That's the one move that they have, is just they have 2 states, which is normal or explode. And you go inside the explosive barrels, you make them explode, and yeah, essentially you just have to remove all of anything that could potentially shoot this guy so he can go and set C4. And again, really clever sequence, cool idea, but just the execution of it's just a tiny bit clunky.
Yeah. I think it's what, like, in that boss fight that you mentioned. First off, it was decent. It was fun. I kind of like the idea. You can like possess the turrets and the people. Once you're just down to the 1-on-1, that's a bit boring because there are sections of this game where you're just there's an enemy with a health sponge and they have like one attack that they do over and over, and you're just shooting at them non-stop until they die.
Actual like player versus computer controlled enemy design isn't very fun. Although that did remind me of the first time that you fight that boss and he has the shield and the whole gimmick. And again, this feels like Miyamoto came over and he pitched the idea of, oh, what if you possess the grenades, roll over to him like you're Kirby, and then blow up?
I did like that. That is... See, those are the good ideas.
There's a kid. Yeah, and I was going to say, can you do that with the grenades in the multiplayer? Can you, like, possess them and roll them around and then, like...
I don't think... I do not think that was part of it.
That's such a letdown.
I did not get the chance to get people on the couch to play the multiplayer, so I've mostly just been like watching videos on YouTube of people doing the multiplayer over the past couple of days, and that did not come up.
That sucks.
Because most of it's like around the strategy of. I mean, it depends on the mode. So yeah, there are three Can I dive deep into that?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I want to know more because unfortunately, I didn't touch the multiplayer with this because I would have been interested to see if it had bots.
I kept unlocking stuff for it.
There are bots in it. Yeah.
Oh, there are bots. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, so I think you can have up to 8 players total. Is there must be a plugin for the GameCube.
So you could use so you could get a broadband adapter or a LAN adapter, which let you link up systems. Because when I was back in the day, that's how we used to do Mario Kart Double Dash. Was we would use link systems to do co-op.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, then I'd imagine that you could have up to 8 real players total, but it does also have bots. Yeah, so there are 3 main modes. One is Possession Deathmatch, which is pretty much just like a typical deathmatch, except like you are a ghost, and around the map are just different hosts. Each of them have different weapons. So you're kind of flying into a host and then trying to kill the other people who have chosen different hosts.
So how do you die in these modes?
So in that mode, you can only die when you are in a host. So when you are doing the more shooty sections, and you can only kill, like the only way you can get points is by killing other people who are in hosts. So like if you're just flying around as the ghost, like you are safe. So if you're really far ahead, maybe like you're just like, I'm going to wait for the time to go out because I'm 5 kills ahead. And I don't want to risk losing that. But you can't like kill people while you're a ghost.
But can while you're getting shot, can you just depossess the host?
I think it takes like a moment to do it. Yeah, it takes like a moment to do it, but theoretically you could if you are able to time it well enough. But I think usually that might be a bit hard to like react that quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, that's like the most basic of the modes. But there is some like interesting strategy of that, right? Of like, I don't think I can win this fight. Time to just like ghost out.
Yeah, exactly. Dip.
I'm just going to hide as a ghost because there's only 30 seconds left and I'm up by 2 kills or something, you know?
Yeah. It almost feels like a perfect game for... It's a shame that it wasn't kind of like they never figured this out at the time, but like it almost feels like the perfect kind of game for like a prop hunt mode.
Yeah.
Where everybody just like possesses an object and then you have like players who are like trying to find what the possessed object is, and like if you're a lampshade, if you think somebody spotted you, you just start rolling around and trying to escape them.
Yeah. The second main mode is Capture the Host, which essentially you possess a host, and then there is a central point where you can take them and depossess, and then you get a point.
That's funny. Okay. So it's like it's like touch football. It's like you grab the pigskin, which is a human being, and try and get them to your girl, essentially. Mm-hmm. That's funny.
So yeah, it like funnels everyone to that spot. So there's lots of conflict there. The other thing that's interesting about it is when a host gets a kill, that host is like worth an extra point when you depossess.
Oh, neat.
Right. So if you're running around as a host and you get like 5 kills, then that host is worth like 5 or 6 points. I think every host is worth 1 point no matter what, and then you get an extra point for each kill.
Yeah.
So there's kind of this strategy of like, do you want to get a bunch of kills with a host, and then depossess at the circle, but you risk maybe like getting killed. There's also you're asking about the getting scared part. In multiplayer, there's like a hijack ability that you can find on the map. That's just like a power up you get, and then you can steal someone's possession. So like theoretically, like if someone builds up a host to have a lot of points, someone else could come and hijack that host to essentially, you know, steal the points away from the one player. So like there is kind of like an element of like, should I just like bull rush, get as many hosts like depossessed on the circle as possible?
Yeah.
Or should I get kills but risk like not having my points be scored in time? So yeah, like an interesting kind of twist on capture or like King of the Hill, or even Capture the Flag.
Yeah, very neat. I mean, it sounds like certainly a lot more. Well, I guess because I suppose with the single player, it is kind of very obvious a lot of the things that they do in regards to. I mean, it does take you by surprise the moment where you rather than possessing the person riding a motorcycle, you possess the motorcycle instead. Like that makes sense, but like the actual single player itself, especially towards the end, becomes very static in regards to the ghost stuff. Doesn't factor in too much, but yeah, it sounds like the multiplayer is built way more around it. But it's funny hearing that, but also hearing that like possessing random objects and animals doesn't seem to be like that big of a factor.
I think that probably was just too much to balance for them.
Probably,
guess.
yeah.
So they just figured, let's just stick it to hosts and ghosts. I think my favorite mode of them, which is the third one, is Hunt.
Okay.
Which at the beginning of it, you choose if you want to be a ghost for that round or if you want to be a host.
Okay.
If you're a host, then like it's just a shooter. And pretty much the hosts all get guns that they can like shoot at the ghosts and do harm to them.
Got ya.
And the ghosts are trying to possess the hosts and then like have them jump into a pit or like jump off a cliff or something. Like they're just trying to possess the hosts to have them die. And then the hosts, like when they get possessed, you can like mash A to get rid of them. You also like I think there's some guns that like have like a shoot like a cloud of like anti-ghost energy essentially.
Oh yeah.
So you can like point your gun at the ground to like make the ghost come out. But yeah, so that was my favorite because it's just like, that is the most like we have team of ghosts, team of humans, and it's like the ultimate of like messing with your friends and that fun of like jumping in and trying to like, just to have them run into a pit of acid or whatever. And kind of like that, like, I mean, all the other two modes are very much like even playing fields, right?
Yeah, sure.
But this is an example of one of those like incongruous kind of gameplay modes because you have an entirely different ability set as the ghost as you do with the hosts and have different like objectives between the two.
Yeah, it definitely made me think of like because it's something that like Nintendo experimented with a tiny bit in the GameCube era with like having asynchronous multiplayer stuff. Like you had the Tingle Tuner with Wind Waker, but then they also had the Miyamoto designed Pac-Man game where 3 players were ghosts on the GameCube on the television screen, and then one person was Pac-Man, but they used a GBA to like see the entire map. But like they sort of figured all that's, well, I say they figured it out, but they didn't really go too far with it. But then with the Wii U, when Nintendo Land comes out, they've just like totally nailed that feeling of that. Like, especially speaking of ghosts,
Luigi's Ghost Mansion is a bit of a banger.
It is
and then they did nothing with it for the entire
it's so annoying.
life cycle.
They should have made Nintendo Land 2, but it was just more Luigi's Ghost Mansion. We didn't need the other
so
one.
much fun.
It was so good.
It also like they would have, I mean, you could turn it off, but like the default was that like the camera of whoever had the Wii U gamepad would like be pointing at their face.
And
show up on the screen. That was so fun. Yeah.
God. I remember that with the Mr. Game & Watch Dance game, and occasionally the submarine would go past, and it was just me with like the biggest double chin. It was so bad. And I was like, the Wii U's a write-off for me. I'm not a worst console Nintendo's ever made for that.
Made me feel bad about myself. 0 out of 10.
I give it a 1 out of it. I'll give it a single point for the Donkey Kong game, which has no camera in it and is very good.
Very, very. It's too good. Ridiculous.
Why did they never? They should have made another Luigi's Ghost Mansion game, and they should have made another version of the Donkey Kong Nintendo Land game that's in there. Weirdly though, the Metroid Prime game in there isn't great, even though it is.
I think it's pretty good.
You think it's pretty good? Well,
I think it's well. I don't think it's. I don't think the multiplayer is great. I think I think the co-op's good. The PvE stuff.
Okay.
But I'm not too fond of the PvP.
No. In fairness, I only ever tried it in single player, and I was never a massive. Like the Wii U
Right.
mode is like a bomber kind of thing, which didn't feel too great. But then, I don't know, I remember being hyped for it because it was like, oh my god, it's like third-person Metroid. They finally nailed it. But then, I don't know, I just never really stuck with it that much. It is funny, though, that we were talking about the multiplayer in this, and like the only other Nintendo first-party FPS multiplayer that I could think of for the GameCube is Prime 2, which...
Yeah.
Ben, have you got thoughts on Prime 2's multiplayer?
I've played it a lot.
Yeah?
Sort of as a kid, my dad and I would play it all the time, and then eventually I got my friend to play it as well, and he... So yeah, it's good, and it's like it's kind of cool how there's things in it that aren't at all in the single player.
Okay.
It definitely had some effort put into it, but at the same time, obviously it's not balanced around it, and most of the time I was only playing with two people, so it sort of ended up being like someone got a power up, they just kill the other person, and then you respawn and then go at it again. And
I mean, I was thinking that because Metroid Prime is obviously built around lock-on. Like, you can never use the second stick for anything, for like, correcting. So yeah, it just feels like if somebody sees you first and they get the lock-on, that's it, they win, essentially.
Yeah, you think so, but then there's also like there was a lot of power-ups that sort of changed the game.
Sure.
There was one that even like disabled lock-on. And then you could have stuff like that like you could turn into an electric ball of death, or
That's pretty good.
and that was the other thing, you could morph ball and like boost around away from your opponent, or
yeah.
it had some cool stuff to do with like the Prime engine, that made it a bit more enjoyable than just shoot until someone's dead.
Did the trilogy on the Wii? Did trilogy on Wii have the multiplayer mode, or did they cut it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still in there. I've never actually played the trilogy version though.
No, neither have I. I almost wonder if it would be a bit more, like it'd have a little bit more to it, because obviously it has full Wiimotes, aiming separate from moving. Yeah,
it could be maybe slightly more interesting. I'm not
could
sure.
be. Maybe we'll have to put that on the docket for another episode of Bullet Time. But just we're not talking about the game. The single player itself is too good to go on Bullet Time. But we'll talk about the multiplayer.
I think it's interesting how a lot of, I feel like, games around that time retooled their single players into multiplayers.
Yeah.
It felt so common. Like Billy Hatcher's one I always think of, where that's through and through a single player game, but somehow they managed to decide, okay, we're gonna have an arena based multiplayer aspect to this that sort of works, but like is also a bit weird.
Yeah, I don't remember any details about that multiplayer, but I played the shit out of it. Like my friends and I played it a decent amount. We had a surprising amount of fun for it. It was, I don't think any of us ever bought it, but it was like a frequent Blockbuster rental to age myself here.
Right.
God, it's funny. I didn't even. I had completely forgotten about Billy Hatcher as a concept until I had met Ben, who's like, one of the best games of the GameCube era, and it's like, I don't know. Don't you have like a big egg, and you was just like, well, the egg's really good for speed running. You can do tech with it, and it's like, okay, I'll
Get to roll around. It's good fun.
Yeah, you do. You get to do like air cancelling and stuff with it. You can use
it's the best Sonic game they've made.
I mean, it's probably the last good Sonic game they made, because it's after Adventure 2, isn't it? Which is funny that you were talking about multiplayer modes like stapled onto single player games. Like, I remember playing a weird amount of Sonic Adventure 2 Battles multiplayer mode, even though it was like when you do the combat in Sonic Adventure 1, where you just keep spamming the homing attack on people, but it's just you doing that against your friends. So it's like whoever can do the most homing attacks first, they get the win. But
yeah, I feel like a lot of those games had this sort of, I don't know, ethereal quality to them that I kind of look back on now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It doesn't feel like games today are a little bit too polished in that respect. That being said, though, that Kirby game just looks like Fall Guys, but you eat stuff. That kind of has a bit of a game that has like a bit of a GameCube energy to it. I don't know what it is about it. Though.
It feels like a Kirby side game. But like a lot more fleshed out.
Yeah, it does. It has that kind of level of polish to it that like Kirby's Air Ride had, which isn't that like the only GameCube Kirby game? Because they were working on one, but they ended up porting it to the Wii as Return to Dreamland, didn't they?
Yeah, I think that's the only one that came out.
So yeah, the only one we got is Air Ride, which is like one of those. If you find it in a second-hand store, it's like $1,000 because it's like gold dust in regards to it didn't sell at the time, but the people who love it like really love it. But is Geist like that? I don't know. Like I said, I've never seen a copy of Geist in like CEX or whatever it is.
I don't think I have either. I can't say it was like a game that was ever on my radar.
No,
until I'd heard about it, but I never really cared to look into it much.
And it is weird, like it is a Nintendo published game, but it's totally like forgotten by, there isn't, Jake Raimi isn't in Smash Ultimate. He hasn't got a special move where he could possess other characters and make them walk off the stage. I don't
think he's a spirit, which would have been
that would have
good choice given the name.
That would have been incredibly fitting, if he was one of the spirit stickers in Ultimate. Yeah. It is funny though, because I was looking at research, and one of the things that pops up was Kensei Tanabe produced this, but then that kind of makes sense because he produced like all of the Western Nintendo stuff at this. Like he was the guy who was on all the Prime games. He's the guy who has to come out every few years to say, yeah, Metroid Prime 4's any day now. Sorry, guys, we're still working on it. But hey, we got this new Mercury Steam game. Check this out. Will that tide you over? But he's the guy who ended up working on like all the next level Luigi's Mansion games and stuff. And I don't know, it's funny because there are, again, it is as you said, it's like there are bits of this game that feel like it has Miyamoto's involvement in it, but it feels. I don't know if he had any kind of interest in the multiplayer, considering that this is the guy that famously, so when Rare were working on GoldenEye 007, and obviously they had to be in contact with Nintendo on it because they were the publisher, they showed it off to Miyamoto, and his whole thing was like, it's a bit violent in it, and they were like, well, yeah, it's an FPS game, and so his suggestion was that during the end credits, all the people that you shot in GoldenEye, you see them in hospital with like bandages and stuff on, and then you go up to all the people in the hospital beds and shake their hand as like, good show. Which it is a shame we didn't get that version of GoldenEye. It is a big old shame. He was also
because I feel sad about what I did in GoldenEye to this day.
I also feel sad about it, especially when I blow up the GoldenEye satellite with Alex Trevelyan on it. I could have warned him. I could have said, "Don't be on there when it explodes, Alex Trevelyan." I'm sorry. How do we feel about Geist then? Geist came out in 2005. It's now 2022. Does it hold up? Is it worth seeking out Geist if you can?
No, I don't think so. No. From a multiplayer perspective, which is the one I'm coming from.
Okay.
No. I think like it does a lot of really interesting ideas with its multiplayer.
Yes.
And, especially we see the state of big current shooters right now, which are, it's a lot of very samey stuff. The main mode that you always play is deathmatch. There isn't a ton of unique big shooters out there. From that perspective, I would love to see people be inspired by Geist. And like, what you were saying, like the ideas in Geist, an indie studio could do some really cool stuff with that, probably both in a single player and multiplayer capacity. The game itself though, I think, I
definitely would say, because we mentioned it earlier, this would be like a perfect rental game. If you paid full price for Geist in 2005, would have felt.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, this would have felt like a rip-off. But if you rented this like for a weekend, you can probably beat the single player in a weekend if you stuck with it. And it has enough like stupid moments in it, but also a couple of cool set pieces that it kind of gets by on that. But I mean, the funny thing is that we haven't even like talked about the shooting in it, and like I barely remember what the shooting feels like. Oh, having only played it a little while ago, but it feels like nothing. It's so bad.
It is like the aiming's sort of weird because it's on the
aim
GameCube
stick. Yeah, the aim assist is fucking cranked in this in the single player. It is fucking cranked in this.
If you have your cursor anywhere near an enemy, it just sort of locks onto them. It might as well have just had a lock on, like the way it works is sort of.
I do kind of wonder, maybe they should have just given it a lock on mode and just used the C stick to, maybe move between like a headshot or a body shot or something like in Time Splitters. But yeah, I don't know. And again, it kind of has that GameCube thing to it where they were really obsessed with the big green A button, and like so many interactions were just designed around press the A button, press the A. So like there's so much, because the A button is like how you possess stuff in this game, innit? And like how you interact with stuff. So it is just 80% of the game is just pressing the A button to do something. Then sometimes met with a little bit of shooting. And I don't know, the game still has a weird, like, I guess from curiosity's sake, it is weird that Miyamoto was involved but didn't say anything about, what if there's a bit where you go into a women's shower and like scare them so you can possess them? Unless maybe that was his idea, I don't know.
I can see it. I can definitely see.
Do you
he's
think
changed
that would
since
be
then? But
do you think it's like, when he used to do interviews and he was like, Pikmin was inspired by I got into gardening as a hobby, or Nintendogs, we bought a pet, and it was like.
I hope not. Is the answer. I want to like Miyamoto, and he seems likable so far.
He seems like a nice guy.
So let's just hope that like he pitched his ideas to Geist, and they're like, "Oh yeah, okay," and then they didn't take enough into consideration, so he went to work on something else. That's my theory.
He pitched the cute stuff. He pitched the dog and the motorcycle. They were probably showed him a motorcycle section. They said you should be the motorcycle.
The classic auteur problem of all the good stuff was Miyamoto.
Yeah, exactly.
All the good stuff was just Miyamoto.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. He came in and he said, "What if you did good stuff instead of bad stuff?" And they were like, "Oh, why didn't we think of that?"
Well, amazing. Thank you, Miyamoto.
I will say I'm on the Geist wiki.
Okay. Have you got any
first off, we got the name of the guy wrong, which says a lot. It's John Raimi, not Jack Raimi.
Oh, I was calling him Jake Raimi, but it's John Raimi.
Oh, okay. Jake, yeah, that's...
Oh, did you get it? Even though you just looked at the Wikipedia page, you got on the wrong
His name is John.
It is John, okay.
And Miyamoto suggested that he... Well, okay, apparently originally he was a rougher, more brutish type who would often speak more and make wisecracking jokes.
Right.
And Miyamoto wanted him to be a silent, intelligent, laid-back protagonist.
Okay.
So he's basically ruined the game because of that.
He took out all the wisecracks. Miyamoto said, "Do you reckon that Ocarina of Time was the same, that Link was doing like a bunch of wisecracks?" And he was like, no, take those out. This is too funny. Please stop.
Do you reckon that means... What does that mean for the Mario movie then? Not a big fan of wisecracks.
I mean, there's no wisecracks in the trailer, is there? I mean... No. You have the penguins saying, "Do you yield?" Like, that's the one joke in it. But then other than that, and Toad saying, "That's a poisonous one." Wait, no, it isn't. That's it. Mario doesn't wisecrack. Mario just says... Maybe
Mario can't wisecrack.
Maybe he can't. Maybe that's... Or maybe that was like Chris Pratt's idea as well. Maybe he pitched that to Nintendo of, "I don't want to do wisecracks." And Miyamoto's like,
I've had enough with
a
famous
non-wisecracky.
yeah. He's like, "I really want to get out of my comfort zone. I don't want people to think of me as Star-Lord. Okay, I want to show people I could be Mario." And Miyamoto was like, "Well, I loved Andy Dwyer in Parks and Rec, so whatever you say goes." All right. God, what was his name in when he? I haven't seen Parks and Rec in years. I can't remember when he Burt Macklin or whatever it was when he used to do action stuff in that.
Yeah.
Miyamoto was a huge Burt Macklin fan. Yeah, I don't know. there was like one thing I was going to mention, which is kind of like the caps off the game for me, which is that it does overstay its welcome. Like towards like, there's a bit where you have a final boss fight at the end of the game, and you think that's it, and then it goes on for another 3 hours, and it just keeps nosediving to the extent that they have 2 final bosses back to back, and one of the final bosses feels like it's from it feels like it accidentally came out of Castlevania Lords of Shadow and somehow ended up in this GameCube game from like 4 years prior, because it's 2 stone Roman statues that come alive, not through ghost magic or anything. They're just 2 statues that come alive. They're not really explained at all. And then when you see the final boss, he doesn't say anything about it. He's just like, you're finally here. Time to have a fight. And it's like, okay, cool. What were the Roman guys about? We're just not going to like mention that. And I guess they didn't. So, yeah.
It's sort of a... Gosh, it's undercooked in so many areas, and I can see a good game out of this. If you could like interact with more, like most things were interactable, and they had a bit more like to them where you could like come up with creative problem solving, like in Breath of the Wild, or just like more systems that kind of work together, and also it was fun. Like I think those would be quite
It'd be cute if they did more animal stuff. Like, I forgot to mention that when you possess a dog, you're colorblind. Like, that's a funny touch.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, no, you get you can only see blue and yellow, which is like a dog, and it'd be funny.
Cute.
It'd be good if like you have to solve like, oh my god, my owner is poisoned. They need the green potion, and you're looking at it, and it's like, shit, which one is which?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say the perspective you get every time you turn into an animal or a motorcycle, it just looks, I don't know how to explain, it's very weird.
Yeah, so when you turn into a rat, you get like a massive fish-eyed lens, like the entire... Yeah. It's funny, they play around with the FOV, like, depending what body you're in, which again, that's a cool... Like, it's those little kind of Nintendo-y touches to stuff, which gives it like an... Because, again, I think if this game had come out on like the PS2 and it was like a Ubisoft game or a Namco game, no... I don't even think it would be on... We wouldn't even have remembered it for bullet time. It would be lost to history. But the fact that it has got this little kind of Nintendo thing to it is... I don't know, it just kind of gives it a little bit more than expected, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of... I think, I don't know, it has got an interesting quality to it. And I think if you were like a hardcore Nintendo guy, if you were making content for Nintendo Life and you were like, what's a game I haven't touched upon yet? I would suggest Geist 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But for everybody else, yeah, I don't know. There were better FPS games. Yeah, there were better FPS games out of the time, including Call of Duty 2, Battlefield 2, Perfect Dark Zero.
Halo 2.
Halo 2 was definitely out of this time, that's true. Future episode of Metroid Prime 2, very true. Future episode of Bullet Time, Quake 4, that came out in 2005. But most importantly, Peter Jackson's King Kong, the game of the movie, came out in 2005. You could have played that instead of Geist.
Classic.
Oh, big year for games.
Yeah, really big. Well, this was like the first. This was when like the Xbox 360 came out, so it was like you had like the first wave of like all these kind of like HD big budgety games.
God.
So
Right next to Geist.
Right next to Geist, the final the final breath of the GameCube, and I guess the final end of Nintendo's weird experimentation of we need to get mature gamers on the GameCube, because yeah, they make the Wii. Well, actually, I guess the Wii got the most mature gamers because grandparents loved they loved Wii Sports. So
I don't think the comparison's too apt, but if you do want to play a mature GameCube game that was published by Nintendo, go with Eternal Darkness.
Yeah, Eternal Darkness, I agree, is the better game. Or
it's a lot more fleshed out.
Oh, any of the Resident Evil games as well, I would suggest. Their GameCube versions are, well, I suppose Remake, that has a good PC port, as does RE4. And
if you really want a game that's like Geist, play Mario Odyssey.
Yeah, if you want to play a better version of Geist, except there isn't a bit You do possess a car in that game, but you can't drive the car.
Yeah.
You can possess a guy
Missed
who's
out.
driving a car. You can possess a guy who has an RC car. And
And you can drive a motorcycle.
moped.
Well, a scooter,
Yeah.
but yeah.
that's true. I don't know. I'm trying to think of. You can possess a big meat as well in Mario Odyssey, which you can't do in Geist.
Not in Geist.
You can possess a block in sort of a rotating cube puzzle. That's pretty good as well. Yeah, I wonder if just Miyamoto, he had some ideas for Geist, but some of them he kept in the pocket of, no, I want to, if I ever do a Mario game with possession, no, these are all the ones that I'm going to keep. Like, Geist originally did have it that you turned into you turned into Goombas and you made stacks of Goombas in it. Somehow. It wouldn't be Goombas, though. I guess it'd be like the dogs or the rats. You would stack the rats up.
Or just some cans.
Oh, just some cans, yeah. Either
Yeah.
way, I don't know.
Geist.
Geist. Before we wrap things up, we're gonna play a little game. We're doing the box office game, even though this is a video game. It didn't come to the cinema; it came to the blockbusters. So this game didn't did even breach the top 40. The game it came out, no qualifications for it. But I'm going to ask you too, what were the top 5 games that came out on August 20th, 2005? Starting with...
God.
It's fine, I'll give you clues to guess, but you're racing for points, it's fine.
I was
August
5. I
20th,
remember the day very well.
2005.
Yeah, you were 5 years old. Don't worry, Ben, I think you're going to get number 1 because
Okay.
it is a sports game, and it's a sport which is very popular in Britain.
Is it FIFA 2005?
It is
Oh,
not.
6. Wait.
It's not FIFA 05.
FIFA 2006.
It's not FIFA 2006.
Because they do a year ahead.
Yeah, but it
What
is
do we
a.
have?
I mean, what are other sports that British people like?
They like cricket,
They do like cricket. That's very true.
rugby. Wow.
Okay, I'll give you some.
Was there a Tiger Woods game?
There was a Tiger Woods game that year, but that's not what's number 1. I'll give you some clues then. So this is a cricket game. This is Cricket 2005. The person's name in front of it, the Tiger Woods of this cricket franchise.
Oh wow, I have
His
I'm not
his first name begins with a B.
I don't know this, James. I actually don't know this.
No, I know you don't, but I'm trying to help you out here. I'm trying to give you some clues.
Ben?
No, not Ben.
No. Barry Whitemore's cricket?
Barry Whitemore. Barry White's International Cricket 2005. The famous soul singer. Sounds a bit like an organ in your body, but you swap 2 letters.
And this is the number 1 game.
This is the number 1 game of the world in August
Wow.
20th, 2005.
And I've probably never heard of it. That's incredible.
I can imagine you never heard of it because of your age at the time. Okay, I'll give you his first name. It's Brian. His second name is the first name of a famous video game heroine.
It's probably not Zelda.
It's not Zelda. No, it's not Brian
Zelda's
Zelda.
cricket.
Raz, if you wanna have a go, you can hop in as well.
Famous video game heroine. I've never even watched cricket.
That's fine. None of us have watched cricket. Famous
I've
video
played it.
game heroine has a first name. The games aren't really named after her though, but it is named after what she does. Or her
That's given up who I was going to say.
and what was that?
I was going to say Brian Lara.
Brian Lara's International Cricket 2005 is number 1 on the charts.
Wait, it is Lara.
Yeah, Brian Lara.
It's named after what she does. Shouldn't Lara
She
Croft?
raids tombs.
Well, the games are called Tomb Raider, aren't
she
they?
raids
And I
Tomb
guess they are called Lara Croft Tomb Raider, aren't they?
Yeah, that's true.
They'll need to split heads. Number 2 on the list is it's a video game adaptation of a DreamWorks film, an animated kids film which came out at this time. But which one was it?
Toy Story 2.
Not Toy Story
Shrek 2.
It's not Shrek 2.
Okay.
Oh, it's DreamWorks. You said DreamWorks.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Wait.
DreamWorks is Toy Story 2.
Yeah, DreamWorks is
not seen
version
that
of Toy
remake?
Story 2.
Is it Shrek 1?
It's not a Shrek, no.
Okay. What did DreamWorks do? I don't think they have anything like that kids would want to play other than Shrek.
Really?
Am I forgetting something?
It's a film with animals in it.
That's always good.
Yeah, no, I thought that too.
Oh, is it Over the Hedge?
No, it's not Over the Hedge, but you are on the...
It's a barnyard.
It's not bad. It's not Barnyard, unfortunately.
What's the one where there's a deer?
It's not Open Season.
Okay.
How are you getting all the... How are you getting all, like, the randos, but not, like, the most obvious one?
Ice Age.
It's not... No, funnily enough, not Ice Age.
Is that DreamWorks even?
No, that's Blue Sky.
No. Oh yeah, they made films, didn't they?
Yeah.
It
It has a celebrity...
we're doing
Much
good
like
at
every
this
other...
game.
Much like other DreamWorks films, it has a celebrity cast as like the main characters.
Was it Shark Tale?
No, but I think this came out like the year after Shark Tale. You've nearly eliminated all the other DreamWorks films. You're getting so
We'll get
good.
it.
When did Madagascar come out? I've never seen him. Was that
wait.
around then? Is
So-
it Madagascar?
So yeah, number 2 on the list is Madagascar.
Madagascar.
Number 3 on the list is another film to game adaptation, but this one is based on a Marvel comic. Unfortunately for you, Ben, these are pre-MCU. These are the bad ones.
Okay, so it wasn't Spider-Man 2.
It wasn't. No, not Spider-Man 2. That was the year before.
Right.
These characters do have an association with Spider-Man, though.
I mean, a lot of them do if you look at
I mean,
the whole,
yeah, on a
the
yeah,
big
I guess,
picture.
I guess.
Would it be like the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games, or is it a more?
Oh no, it's not. It's not Marvel Ultimate Alliance, but it is like it's specifically like a single like it's characters that have their own comic book essentially.
Okay.
Was it an X-Men game?
It's not an X-Men game, no, but it's. Well, no, it's not arguable they're like the X-Men. They're a completely different thing. But no, it's not like X-Men Legends or anything like that.
Fantastic Four.
It is the video game adaptation of the film Fantastic Four at number 4.
Oh, really?
Oh wow.
Well, you kept saying them, so I figured it must be a group and not just an individual.
I was thinking like two people. I was like, I don't know why I think that.
And who are you thinking for like 2 people? Like,
I don't know. I wasn't thinking of anyone really.
fair enough. Number 4 on the list. I don't think it's a game that either of you would remember. I feel like I barely remember it. So instead, I'm just going to be like, it's a term for what would you, if you wanted to make yourself a glass of OJ, what would you do with fruits?
Odama.
It's not. No, it's
Squeeze?
it's not Otamas.
Squeeze? Is it a game called Squeeze?
It is not a game called Squeeze. No, it's something you can only specifically do with fruits.
What's that? I don't. You have like a thing. You know that thing? You like the tool. You turn it on
Yeah.
to like squench. Squench, is that a word? Have I just
It's
made
not.
that up?
It's not Squench. But it'd be good if it was a game called Squench.
Wow, James, this is a shit day for games.
No, I know. It's also it kind of there's a brand of chewing gum that has this word in it.
And these games beat out Geist.
Yeah, these games were better than Geist.
Wow. I'm starting to feel bad for Geist. That's crazy. Can you get first letter?
The first letter is the same first letter as my real name.
Well, I know you could just. I
know. I actually introduced myself as James at the beginning of the show, didn't I? So it was. I more said that to confuse you, to make you have to think. But everyone's kind of confused.
It's not like juiced. It's not.
It is juiced.
Oh, it's juiced. Okay.
Yeah, no,
okay.
Juiced at number 4 on the list. It was a racing game in the style of Need for Speed Underground, although not as good. And then
Juiced is number 4.
Yeah, Juiced is number 4 on the list.
They did make a Juice 2.
They did make a Juice 2.
Juiced also had none of these games.
Juiced also has a very notorious, like, it had an advert that was banned, and it has like nothing to do with the game. It's just like kind of weird porn. So there we go, folks at home. If you want to check that out, just Google Juiced banned advert, I guess. And then number 5 on the list is a sport that's already been mentioned, but by a different developer.
Another cricket game.
It is another cricket game.
Oh my god.
Big year for cricket.
and to be honest, I'll just give you this because the game is literally just called Cricket 2005 by EA.
Wow.
Brian Lara had some competition from Cricket 2005.
What happened to cricket games?
I don't know. Like, cricket games were like, there was a period of time where they were popular, but
yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah, they just kind of fell off the face.
August of 2005.
Yeah, no, the HD era just killed off a lot of developers and a lot of different game types. And cricket, they were one of the ones whose head was on the block, unfortunately. So, I will ask, well,
cricket died for Splatoon.
You know what? That was worth it. If we got Splatoon out of it, that's fine by me. I was going to ask, would you rather Geist come back or cricket games come back? But I feel like Geist would be the answer to that.
I can't say I'd ever play a cricket game, but if they made a new Geist, I would be tempted.
Yeah, I would also be tempted as well. One thing I forgot to mention was that I was saying that Nintendo didn't really bother with mature games after this. There was a Wii U game that was rumored for ages called Acid Ghost, which was meant to star Eminem, which...
Oh wow, I've not heard of this.
Yeah, my theory was that it was meant to be like related to Geist, but yeah, there was just some weird rumor that came out of E3 one year, which was like, yeah, Eminem's going to come on stage and announce a new Nintendo FPS game called Acid Ghost.
Eminem comes on stage to announce Geist 2.
Eminem comes on stage to announce Pikmin 4. Finally, it's happening.
Wow.
Raz, thank you very much for coming on to talk about the multiplayer mode of Geist, and also other aspects of Geist as well,
and other games, really.
And other games, yeah. and thank you for coming on to try and figure out cricket games and stuff like that. It's we put you through a lot, so I guess the kindest thing I can do is say, is there any plugs you want to make? Anything you want to point people towards?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at the Razbuten for daily shit posts. And that's it, yeah.
Nice. Ben, is there anything you want to promote? Thank you very much for being guest host for this.
Yeah, you can go to my YouTube. It's Hate Me Ben. I'll make a video next year.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
I made one this year.
You did get your yearly video out of on Love to Lick. It's pretty good.
Yeah. We're aiming for 2 next year.
Oh, nice. You could do the other 2. You could do 2 more Love to Lick games. After Moon.
I could.
There we go.
It's tempting, but I'll try to diversify my portfolio.
Do you know what my suggestion is going to be? You should do a cricket game and you should do Geist as your next 2 games.
Okay.
There we go.
That might be an idea.
You should do Brian Lara cricket and you should do Geist.
Comparing the 30th and the first best game of August 25th, 2005.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion, and just be like, are they really that different? And then maybe Madagascar for the PS2 as well, if you got the capability for it. I reckon that
got the time.
I reckon that's got to be a multiplayer game as well, because you got the 4 Madagascar characters, so get them all involved. That's my suggestion. Hi folks, I'm James. You can follow me on Twitter at Hotcider, HOTCYDER. On the next episode of Bullet Time, we'll be time traveling back to the Old West and the pre-GameCube era for LucasArts' 1997 game Outlaws, and we'll be joined by video makers Zach Frazier and Chariot Rider. But Until then, keep blasting.
Yep.
Yep. Blasting.
Yep.
We did
Blasting.
it. Blasting. The Bullet Time podcast is made possible by Eric Hamilton Schneider, Valerie B, VG, and the Hot Cider support tier. If you'd like to help with the production of episodes and gain access to extra content, consider supporting over at patreon.com/hot cider. That's HOTCYDER. A special thanks to Max Coburn for the Bullet Time theme tune.